are watching another offering of Bophelong, a place of hope, with myself, Naledi Moleo. A very good afternoon to you. All South Africans have been afforded the right to basic education according to the Bill of Rights. However, with procedures put in place to cater for quality education, the education system still struggles to accommodate the growing population of young people in schools. This afternoon, we follow the journey of Thulani Mbatha, who came from a previously disadvantaged background and later made means to better his future as well as the future of those in his community. Take a look.
Alexandra, or Alex, as it is affectionately known, is a township located in the Gauteng province, close to the wealthy suburbs of Sandton, and is situated on the banks of the Yexkay River. Alex is one of the poorest urban areas in South Africa, which comprises of over 20,000 squalors and poverty-ridden informal settlements. Meet Thulani Mbatha, born and bred in Alex. For him, growing up came with many difficulties.
I actually grew up on London Road. The house is no longer there, but it was a community where it was very close-knit. We all knew each other. A big yard was 165 16th Avenue. I was actually raised by my grandmother early on, and my mom was involved, but working quite a bit because she worked as a domestic servant. But then when I was about 11 years old, I reunited with my father, officially. So I lived with my father when I was about 11 until I moved on to a boarding school.
Thulani went through his primary and secondary education in Alex. However, it was not to be an easy road for Thulani. After matriculating, he had to work as a waiter in order to fund his dreams of studying overseas. Thulani obtained a scholarship from the American International School of Johannesburg to study abroad. This came at a price, though. He had to decide whether or not to leave his family behind in pursuit of his goals and starting a new life without them, or remain at home with limited possibilities.
I used to study in a bus just here in Alex, which was an abandoned bus, double-decker bus, and we used to do our homework there. And one day a white guy was passing by and was fascinated with the bus. My cousin, in fact, who's no more here, who passed away, Philip, used to study there. He was in matric. And that bus became more like our library. So this white man was passing by, saw this bus, was interested with what was happening inside, and then he mentioned that he does teach mathematics, and he was willing to help us with mathematics. And then from there, it was a relationship between the American International School and our school in the township, in this case, Minerva High School. So he arranged for us to go to the American International School, to do Saturday schools. Then he mentioned that they do provide academic scholarship to children from disadvantaged communities like Alexandra. So I was one of the students that applied out of 23, and I was selected. Only 3 of us were actually selected. It's one of those sad stories, but yet exciting for me, because in a way you can say sad because I felt like I was discovered. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to the American International School of Johannesburg. But that came when I was studying at Minerva High School here in Alex. And when I got a scholarship to go to the American International School of Johannesburg, it was a life-changing experience. I never expected that I would leave Alex, let alone leave South Africa. So the American International School provided me that world which I'd never imagined or seen, except on television.
Thulani's arrival in a foreign country, the US, came with many challenges at the age of 18.
One of my friends at the school said, if you want, my mother can assist you. She knows some universities in the United States. You can maybe come and visit us, and then you can visit the universities and then take it from there. So that's all I needed, just someone to say, if you ever come to the US, you can live with us, we can help you. So from there I got a job in South Africa at a restaurant which no longer exists. It was called TGI Fridays. I saved enough money that by December I went to the United States. Then from there I lived with this family that just opened their doors. It was December, cold, snow, never seen anything like that in my life. I lived with this family, really, you can say, for about 14 years, because they became a home away from home.
Would Thulani be able to further his studies? Would he be able to find love? Would he ever return back to his country of birth, South Africa?
Stay with us. We'll be back right after this break. Welcome back to Bophelong, and thank you for staying with us. From being a waiter to building his own empire, Thulani Mbatha's vision was to empower young people through education. This is how he managed to accomplish that. Take a look.
While in the US, Thulani Mbatha obtained his bachelor's degree in economics and master's in public health at the University of Tennessee. Today, he's an international public health consultant. Thulani's goal had always been to educate himself, but in the process he found love at Bria College and married his American wife, Wahida Mbatha, in 2005.
I entered college in 98 and Thulani actually entered in 99. And so we met because I was really active in the Black Student Union and Thulani was very active in the African Student Association. And so we used to do activities together and I was always really interested in understanding more about my African ancestry, and so I was also involved in the African Student Association. And so we met that way, but we were just friends. We actually didn't start a relationship until we actually graduated from college.
That was never the plan. The plan was to get an education and come back. But somehow it happened that I met this gorgeous woman who actually believed in South Africa, who also felt like, okay, she's willing to explore a different culture, a different lifestyle. And it's really that change, that change of meeting her, it really changed everything for me because she was willing to explore. And so I could not say no to someone that was interested in my own culture. And it was that, really. It was love at first sight in a way, but also someone that was interested in where I come from.
Growing up for Wahida in the States wasn't any different from Thulani. With both of them coming from impoverished backgrounds, education was the driving fuel to starting a school.
I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, which is located in the south of the United States. I was raised by my mom, Teresa Tolbert, and I grew up with two sisters. Unfortunately, my father didn't play a role in my life. He was an absentee dad, and so my mom picked up both responsibilities and was my mother and my father. I started off my primary school at a school in my community. However, in the city where I'm from, most kids, they were bused to the suburbs. And so I was bused to the southern suburbs of Louisville, Kentucky. I went to very diverse elementary schools. They weren't the best schools, but I always felt that my teachers believed in me. So I was really lucky to have access to decent schooling.
After residing in America for 14 years, in 2011, Thulani decided to come back home, leaving the bright lights of Washington, D.C. for Dark City, as Alexandra has always been known. Here, they are opening up the first private school in Alex, which will register learners from grade R to grade 12.
For me, it was one of those things where it all changed in 2009 when I had my son. When I felt like, you know what, I now have a South African child and I'm living in America. So I felt like I need to go back home to help the next generation that will come after me. So for my son to be able to be proud to say, you know what, if anything else, my dad gave me an opportunity, which is to be educated. But he did not only do it selfishly, just for my son. That way I'm doing it for the other children. Because, it's one thing to educate a family member, but I think empowering and changing a community is another thing.
When Thulani and I first got the vision to start the school, we did a lot of discussion around what did education do for us. Because we both came from what's called disadvantaged communities. And so for me, education gave me freedom. It gave me freedom to live a life of choice. And so I said, Thulani, I need you to help us to find a word, in one of the 11 official languages, one of the languages that's really common in Alex, that really represents what education did for us. And so one day, Thulani actually sent me an SMS, and he said, I have a name for the school. And he said the name for the school is Hololo, which means to set free. And so for me, that was perfect. Why Alex? Thulani is from Alex, and so definitely that's one of the influences. But I think that, we've seen the emergence of schools that are working to serve learners from disadvantaged communities, but we haven't seen, that movement come to Alex. And so my question is, why not Alex?
Leaving everything behind for Wahida and immigrating to South Africa was her biggest challenge.
Moving to South Africa was a part of my marriage contract. I knew that that was something that if I was going to marry Thulani, I knew that was something that I needed to make sure that I was ready to do. And so it was something that we agreed that we would do at some point. I think just being away from my mom and my sisters, that was the biggest challenge, because we had a relationship where we would talk every day. And so being so far away, with the expense, I think that changed the way they were able to communicate. But I think that we've really adjusted in the past 3 years.
The school is expected to be launched early next year in May, and with Wahida obtaining a Master's for Science in Education Policy and Community Studies, Hololo Academy is sure to lay the foundation for quality education.
One of the things is that we're going to have an extended school day. Right now, most of the schools finish at about 1:30 or 2. And if you come to Alex at that time, you'll see a lot of children that are being looked after in general, by the community, but they're not necessarily engaged in structured activities. And so our school day will actually go till 4, and then parents will have the option of keeping their children at school till 5:30. And with that time, we'll have extended literacy blocks in both English and in Zulu, and then we'll also have extended math blocks. So that's one of the things that looks really different about our school. But again, we really want to make sure that we're maintaining a high standard. And so our goal, from pre-R, from the 4-year-olds, is going to be university. What things they need to learn at pre-R in order to prepare them for success in university.
With many parents planning to enroll their children at the school, the people of Alex had this to say.
Most of the time, not most of the time, actually all the time, we take our kids from Alex to the outer suburb to get better education and all. But now, since they came with this plan, since they came with this, why not? It's here in Alex, you know what I mean? So, and it will save. It will save money, all the troubles, kids traveling in the morning from here to school, longer distance, there could be accidents and stuff, but when the kid is here, is around, why not?
What is great is what the great legendary icon Madiba said, that the future is in your hands. So we are seeing people like Thulani himself, the future is in our hands also, to say this is 100% fully black owned, it's one of its kind, and hopefully in the not long distance future, I would love to see white kids coming to attend this kind of a school.
The real big hope is that when people see it in action and working with parental involvement in the way that parents should really stay involved in their children's education, I'm hoping it's just a fire starter, in that there'll be more people who are inspired to become school founders themselves and base it where there is the greatest need. So in the communities that may be low income, that may be poorer, that may not have access because of funds to better education. So I'm hoping it's that, I see it as a thing that will prove that education doesn't have to be expensive, it's not exclusive. You can do it where you are for the African black child.
When they are not implementing ideas of Hololo Academy, just like any married couple, they spend leisure time with their son, Temba.
I always come to Alex. This is my community. This is my home. I have friends here. It's really, for me, a fun way of enjoying my country is just always finding new things. So we take the children to a variety of national parks. I cannot tell you how often I go to the Apartheid Museum. I enjoy it because I always see something different. So I go there just to explore the things that we never had a chance to explore before.
Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon in which you can use to change the world. Both Thulani and Wahida have taken the very first steps in improving the quality of education. It appears they will stop at nothing, and it is anyone's guess what they are planning next.
After the break, we're joined in studio by Thulani Mbatha, the CEO of the South African Graduates Development Association. Don't move. Welcome back to Bophelong, a place of hope. We're now joined in studio by Thulani Mbatha, who is the CEO of the South African Graduates Development Association. And he's here to talk to us about South African graduates that have left the country to seek for greener pastures and then returned home to plow back, just like Thulani Mbatha has done. Mbatha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on your show, Naledi.
It's so good to have you. We've been looking at the story of Thulani Mbatha, who is a young man who left the country seeking for greener pastures after years of being in the States, returned back home, and is now starting up a school in his community of Alexander. But before we start getting into the element of them plowing back, let's talk about the challenges that we're actually facing with the brain drain. How many skilled South Africans are we actually losing to the international world?
Well, when you look at the statistics released by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, we realize that in the past 10 years, around 500,000 South Africans have left. But the good news, however, is that many of these have come back, actually, thanks to the global recession, because the countries where they were going to seeking greener pastures could not afford to employ foreigners. So they opted for their own locals, and that is why many South Africans are coming back. But also thanks to the campaign by the homecoming revolution to say South Africans come back, especially those with skills, expertise, to come and ensure that this good country becomes a great country.
I think if you'd spoken about the brain drain maybe a decade ago, it was still a very big concern for South Africans. The implications of us having lost so many skilled South Africans in the time that we did.
Well, there are two implications that I can talk of. One is that oftentimes people leave temporarily because they want to go and better themselves. The United States is about 50 years ahead of us in so many things. And when people go either to the US or to Australia or New Zealand, they become better. And actually, you tend to like and love your country more once you have seen a different area or a different country altogether. I myself, I lived in Australia in 1995. Coming back, I was much more of a South African than I was before. The second implication then is that when people leave, they are more likely to come back. And when they come back, they add more to the development of the nation.
Right.
South Africa will still need a lot of people with expertise to come and make sure that they don't just plow back, but they live on purpose. Remember, when you live on purpose, you give more than receive.
I want to talk a little bit more about, you're mentioning that those that have traveled and have spent some time abroad come back as even more South African than they were when they left. But let's talk about the kind of impact that they can have, having had that worldly experience, a worldly mindset, and the impact that can have when they do come back, and how does that impact the work that they do back home?
Well, with the kind of exposure that you have, let me make a quote by Robert Kiyosaki. He said, "Do not let the fear of losing be greater than the excitement of winning." And if that becomes an axiom by which we live on, you realize that when you come back, you don't need to be recognized for your contribution. You contribute because you're living on purpose. You contribute because you want to make other people better. Actually, the greatest axiom that I live by is that by giving more of what I know and what I have, that's when I receive much more. So I think South Africans who've left this country and come back become much more patriotic, and they become a little bit tolerant and patient to say, well, things are different out there, and we can assist other South Africans, to get to where we want them to be, to step up so that they can become great in their own way.
Right. We're looking at the story of Thulani himself having come back home and then decided to start up the school. It begs the question, for those that have traveled the world and have come back home, is there a sense of perhaps a responsibility to your country once you have come home, a sense of, no, we need to right the wrongs that we see in our own communities? Because you have seen that in countries like Australia and countries like the States, education perhaps is completely different to some of the challenges we're facing here.
Let me first say that we're very proud of Thulani for what he's achieved. It takes, again, a person who lives on purpose to come back and say, I do not just want to plow back, but I want to give to my community. I want to give of what I have. I want to share what I know. So for us, it is important that many more Thulanis, and there are so many unsung heroes who would leave the country and come back to plow back. So what we want them to do is to be able to say, this is where I start. This is what I have. I'm giving of what I have. What else can you contribute? So the Thulanis of this world, when they come back to plow back, let us support them. Because there's a tendency to say, who do you think you are? You know, you think you know. This is a problem that has been long in existence. Do you think you can be able to solve all problems? No. Thulani does not seek to solve all problems. He seeks to give of what he knows and what he can do best. And I think that is what we need to recognize and acknowledge.
We have, you know, thousands of South Africans that have even gone abroad to study and then come back home and struggled quite a bit to find employment back home. What are some of the challenges and the reasons for them struggling to find employment back home? It's been said that, you know, a lot of them apply for jobs and they're told, oh no, you're overskilled. And that then adds to the frustrations of having been in South Africa and not being able to access opportunities.
Now, Lady, there are two spins to what you've just said. One way it's said to realize that someone goes abroad to better themselves, they come back, they cannot find a job. Remember, I started by speaking about living on purpose. When you live on purpose, you do not look for a job. Because you yourself, you know, you are a lifetime worker. You create jobs. So I'm glad oftentimes that when people have come back after invested so much on the human capital, they come back and do not find jobs. Because those people can add value to this country. We want more job creators than job seekers. So when you have gone abroad, you've bettered yourself, you've got better skills and expertise, you've advanced your level of understanding, come back and start something new. Absolutely. There are many NPOs, there are many NGOs. We need companies, we need innovation in South Africa. And when you had, you know, a kiss of what we call inventive society, come back. Don't look for a job, but give to South Africa what you know.
All right, start something right from scratch for yourself. Just as we wrap up, we have about 2 minutes, so perhaps I'll ask two questions at the same time. The first one being, Wahida and Thulani's aim right now is to start up a school in Alexander, focus specifically on early learning development. Some of the advice that you'd have to give them, we've had so many discussions about how in South Africa, learners are not prepared for primary school, are not prepared for secondary school, and are certainly not prepared for tertiary school. So they're working with the foundation level, some advice for them, and also just some of the work that the association is up to.
Well, what I could say to Thulani and Wahida is that begins with the end in mind. Come up with an innovative concept. You know, starting at the foundation level is very important, but what it is that they could do differently, they can contact the ETDP SITA because they work in that area. They can work with other organizations, but what they could do differently is to bring in an aspect of career development right from the foundation phase. Right. Take those young people or toddlers to a university. So you're starting with an end in mind and help them to build their careers up. Secondly, in South Africa, I've realized you do not need money to start a company organization. When you are armed with a strong vision and a tough mind, you have all what you need.
Right. Well, give us perhaps an email address or a website for the South African Graduates Development Association.
It's www.shgdasagda.org.za, and the email address you can email to info@sagda.org.za.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Thamsanqa Maqubela, CEO of the South African Graduates Development Association. That's how we conclude today's show. We welcome your feedback via our communication channels. Our Twitter handle is @Bophelong Show, and you're more than welcome to email us as well, bophelong@sabc.co.za. Catch us same time next week. From myself, Naledi Moleo, and the rest of the Bophelong team, enjoy the rest of your weekend.